How's everybody doing today? And today we're coming back again for my favorite kind of videos, and that is a franchise ranking video. And we're going to be covering the Final Destination films today. And it's interesting because this is a franchise that I actually only before saw the first two films, and it's actually been since only a little bit after the second film came out that I actually have seen either the first or second of these films, and I did not watch any of the other three before these past couple days. But I have to say, all in all, um, I understand why they haven't done another one. But if you like, you know, big, crazy gore scenes and just people getting murked out of nowhere for no reason, then you will love these films and thoroughly enjoy them. So, coming in at number 5 is, of course, Final Destination 5. And this movie, I watched them all in order. And by the time I got to this film, I actually had no hopes for this movie being anything other than what this franchise had to offer. Um, and cat, come on, man, say hello to Kitty. Hello, Bruce. Oh, nope, 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 nope. There you go. It had not a lot else to offer than any of the other films, except the bridge scene at the beginning. Of course, all of the beginning scenes from these films are these outrageous spectacles that are actually really fun to watch. This one is no exception to that. That was actually the best part of this movie was the beginning scene. I felt that the cast should have performed a lot better than it did overall. It actually had some really great actors in this film, but they just didn't perform. It was subpar. It was a redundant, unnecessary film that showed promise with one aspect. And I'm not trying to spoil anybody to this on this film, but that one aspect is that if you kill somebody, you take the remainder of their life to live on. And after the four other films and how they ended and uh, how everything has culminated in the series, I actually felt like there should have been some payoff from that mechanic. And I mean, there kind of was, but at the same time, there wasn't. Uh, and once, if you watch the film to the very end, you will understand what I mean. But yeah, that is the one reason why this is at number 5 instead of number 4, because that mechanic should have been the one thing that really set it apart from the other films. But by the time you get to the end of the film, that mechanic means nothing. And moving on to number 4, and that is Final Destination 4. And this one had the grand spectacle at the beginning, but this one has the worst spectacle of all 5 films, in my opinion, for a beginning spectacle or beginning scene that kicks off the movie. And this one had nothing remotely memorable about the vast majority of it. And in fact, at the beginning, one of the main things that stood out to me that made me just go like, "Oh my gosh," was there's parts of the bleachers, the stadium, it's concrete, and part of it falls on some people, and the way that it looks worse than like any other scene in these kills in these movies, and I just absolutely hated it. And the kitty again. Put you down, buddy. All right. And um, the characters weren't memorable. They were slightly more memorable than the fifth film. Um, and then the scene in the mall and the theater. Sorry guys, the cat's going crazy. Hey man. Hey. Stop. I got a couple of them, and they decide that every time I'm filming, they're gonna make a bunch of noise. But yeah, the Coleman that scene is in the theater and the mall. That scene is one of the main things that actually pushes this movie into fourth place, while there's a couple of things about the fifth movie that push it back into fifth place. So these movies really aren't that far apart from each other, and just I don't think they're bad movies. They're just meh. Do without them. And this is where the order starts switching up. And at number 3 is Final Destination 2. And this film was one that I absolutely loved whenever it first came out. And me and my friend Jeff would slow-mo the kill scenes and watch them frame by frame. Just just to see, what the effects looked like frame by frame, and that was really fun for us at that time, because this is I don't remember what year this movie came out, but yeah, we were pretty young and really enjoyed doing that. But rewatching this film and watching the rest of it, all of them together, this is another film that the characters just aren't memorable. You have some really decent actors in this movie, and they're just not memorable, not interesting. There's not a lot going on. The story's not interesting. The kills were like, they were really cool to me as a kid or as a teenager, but now that as an adult, I'm sitting here looking at them like, man, like, there's nothing special about this. The build up to these kills just really isn't that interesting or fun. I think these movies are better for teenagers to watch, or at least they were better before all the modern like gore films that we have now that have much more interesting, complex gore scenes in them. All right, and coming in at number 2 is the first Final Destination. And I didn't like this movie the first time I saw it. I thought it was kind of boring. But now that I'm an adult and appreciate film and appreciate the actual story now, instead of being a teenager and just appreciating the kills and going like, number 2 has more vivid, crazy kills than number 1, so it's the more superior film. Nope. This one actually has interesting characters, interesting development of those characters. The way that the plot kind of thickens, and they're learning about things. This is the first film, so when they're learning about these things, it actually matters, and you get a sense of them trying to actually figure out a way to beat this. Whereas once you get past this film, you're like, there's no way to beat this. And then, of course, when you get to the fifth film, you're like, oh, there's a new thing that nobody apparently thought about, but it's kind of psycho. But that winds up being nothing as well. But this being the first film, them trying to figure out what's going on, and just the characters themselves actually interact with each other in such much more interesting ways than they do in the later films, most of the later films. And one of my biggest gripes with these movies that I should have mentioned in the other ones, but I'm going to mention it on this one because it does not happen in this movie, is that people do not react to the deaths of the other characters in a very what I feel like would be an appropriate way. Like, it's almost like they're phased a little bit, but like there's very little emotional reaction from most of the characters. But in this film, there's a ton of emotional reaction, especially from the main character, and even the FBI are like, we got to do something about this. Like, they're trying to figure out if this guy is a serial killer, like taking out these people that didn't get on the plane. And it just becomes a much more interesting story, even though the kills are actually pretty toned down compared to the later movies. With everything going on, it just makes this film far more superior than the other three that I mentioned. And for the number one, this movie is so good. This one is actually, to me, a good film. This one and the first film. And that is Final Destination 3. And just like all the other ones, this one has an epic, awesome, grandiose kill scene at the beginning of this film. But one of the main things that sets not only this film apart, but also the first film, is that the emotional response of characters in this film and in the first film. And not only does this film have much better emotional responses from characters, this film has the best characters in the entire franchise, in my opinion. The guy and the girl that work in what looks to be like the back room of like a Lowe's or something like that. Those two characters, especially the guy, and what happens with him later on and his interaction, I think that his performance is like probably the best in the entire franchise. And I don't even know who the guy is. I didn't even look him up, but his performance, in my opinion, was like the best out of this entire franchise, besides the main guy, the main girl and guy from the first movie. But just how everything in this plays out, there are siblings at stake in this film, which was not present in any of the other films. And that sibling connection and her trying to save her sister is so much more emotionally charged than even trying to save, your boyfriend or your girlfriend, because none of the characters in any of these movies are married or have been in like super long-term relationships. They've been in, like, some of them are in on and off again relationships even, and it just there's so much more. It's like I said, it's more emotionally charged, and it just feels like an actual complete film instead of just a gore fest for the sake of a gore fest. And that is why Final Destination 3 is the best of the Final Destination franchise. Anyway, if you liked this ranking video, please leave a like and subscribe. If you didn't, then hate me in the comments all you like, and we'll have a good laugh about it. Anyway, y'all have a good night, and I'll see you later.